Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Burning Question. This is Behind the Steel Curtain Deputy Editor Dave Schofield coming at you with the Burning Question this week. For those of you who are tuning in, hoping to see Brian Anthony Davis because it was his turn in the rotation, he is, I think, camping in the woods somewhere or something. It just worked out better for us to switch it up this time. So it's me coming at you. Would have been a little bit sooner, but I got caught up a little bit. Not really into it, but just checking out a little bit of the Senior Bowl while things were going on this Saturday. That just kind of seems like the first weekend of the year. Well, obviously of this year, of the decade, if we really wanted to be technical about it, but it's the first weekend since the beginning of September where there wasn't NFL football. So I do know that technically there's what's called a game tomorrow in the Pro Bowl. It's a great chance to see players, but it's not the real football game that we're used to seeing. But that's just how it is. So it's that, I don't know if we really like this 2 weeks off for the Super Bowl. I know the teams like it. It's not the craziness to get there, but as a fan, I don't know. I'd kind of like to just kind of roll right on into the game. But that's not going to be our burning question this week. We're looking ahead. This is the Steelers. We're focused on the Steelers, and right now with the Steelers, we're talking off season. We've got things to worry about. We've got salary cap issues we're looking at. We're looking at signing potential unrestricted free agents for the Steelers. We've got restricted free agents that the Steelers have to decide if they want to tender. They've got exclusive rights free agents that they have to decide if they're going to sign. There's still plenty of other things going on leading up into this season. So one of those things, this is usually, and it's funny because I was watching the Senior Bowl, usually this is when fans start to pour into getting ready for the NFL draft. Here's the thing about the NFL draft this year, and this is the burning question. Are Steeler fans disappointed because the Steelers don't have a first-round draft pick? Is there a letdown? Is there kind of a disheartening of the Steelers not having a first-round draft pick? Now, there's more than one way to look at this. And the first way to look at it, which isn't the way I'm going to focus on, is in one way, I'm glad the Steelers don't have a first-round draft pick this year because what they got for that first-round draft pick is an all-pro player. You'll get to watch him tomorrow if you choose to tune in the Pro Bowl with Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's kind of one of those things where, I think I'd rather have Minkah Fitzpatrick on the great rookie deal for the years that the Steelers are going to have him now in a known commodity, already all pro. You can't always get that out of what you're getting in the first round of the draft. You would like to, but you don't always get that. So when it comes to that, I don't regret the trade. I love that the Steelers have Minkah Fitzpatrick. As Jeff Hartman's already said, when it comes to that first round of the draft, we're going to be celebrating Minkah Fitzpatrick because that is our first round pick. Lance Williams just sent out a text to me this afternoon with the question of, is getting Ben Roethlisberger back like having a first round draft pick? Well, that depends a lot on the Ben Roethlisberger that comes back. I had a series of articles this week that ran Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The first one was kind of a personal story about how I became such a crazy Steeler fan. I was a Steeler fan, but part of what took my fandom to the next level was the whole experience with the Steelers getting Ben Roethlisberger, with the Steelers winning their first Super Bowl that I could remember because I was born right before their last one. I was not even 2 years old when the Steelers won their last Super Bowl of the 70s. So it's going to be great to get Ben back. They're going to have Minkah. Some people asked this past season, wouldn't it have been great to have Ben with Minkah? I don't think it would have happened. The Dolphins made it perfectly clear that part of the reason they made the trade with the Steelers was because they believed it would be a very high draft pick because of Ben Roethlisberger. Little did they know the Steelers were still in playoff contention. So that's one aspect of not having the first round draft pick. We're going to focus on the other. because I know those of us behind the steel curtain, those of us that the writers for the site, the podcasters, so much of what we do from this point till the end of April is really surrounds the NFL draft. And with the Steelers not having a first round pick for the first time since 1960, I'm going to get it wrong. I was going to go 7, but that might not be right. That it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that it's been that long that since they haven't had a first round draft pick. So we're so accustomed to this, and we are we going to miss looking at the mock drafts? Are we going to miss all the hype of the combine, especially when it comes to things like who's going to be first round picks? Are we going to miss? Obviously the Steelers aren't going to be picking someone who's going to be that more than likely is going to be at the draft because they don't pick until pick 49. Are we going to miss the hype of that first day of the NFL draft? I think so. I'm going to miss that personally. It's really difficult, especially when I'm doing mock draft Mondays. There's an article that's on the website if you want to check it out, where I do a report on just any mock draft that I can find. And the problem is it's tough to find one that's 2 rounds to see what they have projected for the Steelers. So I haven't agreed with the picks that I've kind of posted so far, especially the last one, which had them taking a quarterback with their first pick. I don't see the reason to do that unless something completely changes with Ben Roethlisberger. But that's just kind of how it is. That's how things are going with that. I'm going to miss that. I don't know if you all missed that. I look forward to it. And honestly, from a content standpoint from the website, with this being my first off season as the deputy editor, I am definitely going to miss that. But the Steelers have their first round pick. They have it in Minkah Fitzpatrick. So I'm actually, for some reason, my live chat has kind of frozen up a little bit. It's further on my phone than it is on my computer to see if anyone in there is how they kind of feel about that and deal with it. Yes, I got your email and I watched that video. I just didn't get a chance to respond. So thank you. He sent me a really nice Steelers hype video. So I'm going to go ahead and check where some people were chiming in, because I'm going to also talk about something else that I have coming out of the website before too long. Simple answer from SJ Steelers fans 1. Nope. Says not going to miss it. We got what we got. Okay. And like what Deal With It said, of course it's a letdown, but we got Minkah. You have to look at it both ways. It's a letdown that you're missing out on the experience, but I don't think it's a letdown with what you ended up getting value out of that draft pick, if that makes any sense, which I think for a lot of people, that's kind of where you're coming from. Well, they're like, no due to Minkah, but double-edged sword is what Michael O'Malley says, which is, yeah, you're going to miss out on that top talent, the excitement of everything, because especially when it comes to mock drafts and projections, it's hard for anyone to be anywhere close in the first round. Last year, I did a mock draft for the first round with Brian Anthony Davis and Tony Defio when we did it on The Hangover, and we did all 32 picks of the first round. I'm pretty sure I won with 5 correct. Yes, 5 correct. It's so hard to figure out what's going on. When you get out to pick 49, you really have no idea what kind of what's going to be available. So the bigger discussion with Steeler fans is going to be more of what's the positions of need and things like that. And free agency is going to figure that out a lot. Like I've said repeatedly, if Bud Dupree's still with the Steelers, outside linebacker, low on the needs lists. If Bud Dupree is not back with the Steelers, I'm not saying it's the highest need, but it definitely jumps up there to something that the Steelers are going to need to do with that position. Same kind of deal with tight end. Right now, technically, the Steelers only have 1 tight end from the 53-man roster that's quote unquote under contract, although 2 of them are counting towards the salary cap, because they have Zach Gentry, who was drafted last year. Nick Vannett is an unrestricted free agent, and Vance McDonald has 2 more years on his contracts, but they're both club options. So the Steelers have until I think it's thought I saw it was like March 17th, which is even after the new league year starts. I think it's a week later, to exercise their club option on Vance McDonald. So until they say, yes, we're exercising this option, technically it's up in the air. So tight end is another one of those positions and things like that. So we'll be talking about the positions, but just the whole limelight and the whole spectacle that the NFL does now with the first round of the draft, that the Steelers aren't going to be a part of it. It's a little disheartening. DeWitt had said it'd be nice to have both. It really would. It would be nice to have both. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit, because it's one of those things for losers that Lance Williams talks about, of one of those what if scenarios where the Steelers still could have had Minkah and a first round pick. But we'll get to that after a bit. Here's what I wanted to try to see with this. What Jesse George said. All these outside media pundits keep saying we're going to draft a quarterback or get a veteran in free agency, and I don't see it. I wouldn't mind if they grabbed a veteran. I just think we'll stick with Ben. Even when it comes to grabbing a veteran, if you ever watch the Steelers Stat Geek show, my brother and I asked this a lot this past Tuesday, whenever it came to possible free agents for the Steelers. The big question you have to ask is, with what money? Oh, I think the Steelers should sign, someone said, Jadeveon Clowney. With what money? Okay, right now the Steelers are right up against the cap. They can't even they could not franchise tag Bud Dupree today, because they have to have that space available under the salary cap in order to put the tag on someone, and they do not. And with it being the final year of the collective bargaining agreement, there's a lot of rules with that final year clause. I actually have an interesting article coming out in the next couple of days about how the franchise tag even works different. You could actually use more than one tag this year. I don't know that'll help the Steelers, and that's part of what the article addresses. But you also can't restructure deals in the same way that you've restructured them in the past, because you can't have a payout larger than 30% each year of what it was the previous year. Because before, the Steelers would just convert everything to signing bonus, which divvies it out over the rest of the years remaining on the contract. And you can't do that the same way now to save the money that they have in the past. So the Steelers, unless there's a new CBA signed by the beginning of the new league year, they don't have much money to work with. So most of what they're going to do to build this team back up and things that they lost is going to have to be through the draft. So it is just how it is. And I'm still trying to see, I'm still not getting all the responses in the live chat coming up on my screen, but they'll come up eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, kind of preview a little bit of an article that I have that'll be coming out. I'm not sure when we'll run it in the next few days. And it's the whole notion of, just think if the Steelers would have had a first round pick this year, and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Devin Bush, but they wouldn't have had their third round pick. And it's the whole notion of, what if the Steelers, it might not have played out this way at all. This is a big what if, but what if the Steelers would have used the non-exclusive franchise tag on one Mr. Butt Naked Get Robbed, that is Le'Veon Bell? What if they would have used a non-exclusive franchise tag on him the second year they used the tag, which would have allowed him to go out and negotiate a deal with other teams? And the Steelers would have had the option to match that deal. But if the Steelers did not match that deal, they would have got the next two first-round draft picks of that team. So if they would have used, but at the time, the Steelers didn't want to run any risk of losing Bell. They thought by using the exclusive tag, they were showing to him that how much they wanted him. I think he kind of took that the wrong way, and he really wanted to be able to say, hey, let me see what other people will pay me, and then you decide if that's what you want or it's what you don't. And that, I think that would have worked out really good. Reed was saying about not using the non-exclusive in the second year. I'm not 100% sure about that, if it's that one or the transition. If not, even just using the non-exclusive the first time. So, but for the second consecutive tag. So even if they would have done that, but that might have that might have changed up having another first round pick this year. But that's something we got to look into. But the Steelers might not have. I mean, if a team like the Jets would have wanted Le'Veon Bell and given up their next 2 first round draft picks, that could have been where the Steelers could have got Devin Bush without even having to trade up for him. There's a lot of what ifs in there, which unfortunately played out with Mr. Bell in that situation. But the biggest thing that was the unknown is that no one actually believed that he would hold out the entire season and not play, which is why things went the way they did. But there's all these other kind of things, and there's still discussion of, can the Steelers trade back into the first round if they need to? They'd have to have, obviously, they don't have nearly as much draft capital this year as they did last year, where last year they had 10 picks. So they used 2 of them to trade up and get 1. They also used this year's 3rd round draft pick to go along with that to make that trade. So in all, the Steelers, they don't have a 5th round pick, but they have 2 picks in the 4th. They don't definitely have a 3rd round pick yet, but as soon as the league announces the compensatory picks, they're projected to have that 3rd round pick. So will the draft be the same, having to wait a day until the Steelers get there? What do you all think? I'm going to open it up to the live chat. Now is also a time that if you just have any question in general, fire it out there and we'll bring it up and see what you all have. I'm gonna back up a little bit and see if I can maybe catch up. Snowman says, let Stud Dupree go and draft an outside linebacker. That's honestly, that is something that Lance Williams talked about. Was it last week's burning question? I do believe, about should the Steelers just let Bud Dupree walk? Meaning, is it going to be too much to try to sign him? And therefore, I mean, I know they talked about it again on the Standard. Is the Standard this week that are you going to have to release too many players in order to have the money to try to keep Dupree? And the more I think about it, is like it has to be like a 4-for-1 deal. They'd have to cut 4 different guys at least in order to keep Dupree. So that's Steeler fans need to be bracing themselves for that as a possibility. Okay, so but then we have Gyro that says we should keep Bud on a 1-year deal and see if he can keep up his performance. I agree. I would not mind if the Steelers had the room to just use the franchise tag, see if he could keep up the performance, and then see about working out a deal. But I just don't know. It's really difficult with that to see. There's going to be a lot going on with what is he going to demand. And basically right now, the Steelers' best way to keep Dupree would be that franchise tag, but they do not have any way, no way to restructure. They would have to release players in order to have the space to do that. So yeah, the party just started, Dante Harris. I hear you. Okay. Just George says they can do what they want with Buzz because no one will ever match an offer for Bud if they lose picks. That's if they use the non-exclusive tag. But once again, it's the exclusive tag and the non-exclusive tag carry the same price. So you don't save anything there. Now, the only other option the Steelers have is using the transition tag, which is for outside linebackers about $4 million less, not $4 million, sorry, about $2 million less. But with the transition tag, that player can go work out a deal. Team still gets the rights of first refusal. But if you don't match it, you don't get the draft picks. And not only do you not get the draft picks, you also don't get any compensatory value for that as well either, because that was something that was reported that the Steelers considered using the transition tag on Le'Veon Bell his 3rd year, which I still think would have been crazy. I'm just going to call him X. I've been doing that since Stat Geek. Not wise to trade up this year. Okay. I don't know. I don't think that I don't know that the Steelers have anything that they want to target. I mean, Jeff Hartman asked the question, if the Steelers really only felt like they had one big need in the draft, would you mind sacrificing almost all your picks in order to go up and get it? And I'm like, I don't think they could afford to do that. So Um, that's just kind of one of those things. People are really back and forth about some really want to sign Dupree, some really want to let him walk. I can see a great argument for both. Okay. Dante Harris says it feels different not having the number one pick, but I love that we have Minkah. We can't play with the number two pick. We need a game changer at running back. I don't agree with that at all. And some people say I'm crazy for this. The problem with that, with the quote game changing running back, are they ready to be a game changer right out of the gate? Because if the Steelers are going to draft a running back, basically the Steelers are almost really in need of having someone who at least has the potential to contribute this season with their top draft pick in the second round. So when it comes to running back, yes, James Conner has a problem being healthy, but guess what? He should be healthy going into training camp. So it's not like you're planning on him not being there. Benny Snell was coming off a good rookie campaign. Jalen Samuels disappeared at the end, but like I've said before, he fits in more of the style of the way Ben Roethlisberger would use a running back. Just look what he did against New England in week 15 of 2018. Then you've had Kareth White came in last year where the Steelers picked him up off the Bears practice squad, and he had the best yards per average of any of the running backs. If you're going to bring in yet another running back, one or two of those guys is gone. So with so many other positions that need filled, I don't think running back is the top need for the Steelers. But that's the one thing that's crazy about the second round is it really depends on who's there when it gets to your pick. Dante Harris also says to sign Dupree. Deal with it says find a way to keep Dupree. Ezra said we led the league in sacks, and everyone's talking about letting Bud go. That's true, but would we say Bud Dupree was overly productive before this past year, and yet the Steelers were still up there leading the league or close to leading the league in sacks the last 3 seasons? So, and they did it this year without Stephon Tuitt. So if you really are wondering about that, go back and listen to the Standard is the Standard with Lance and Jeff on Wednesday night when they were talking about that and how if you can get more production out of your defensive line, I know they could lose Javon Hargrave, how that could really help just having that other outside linebacker. Let's see, what else do we have? X wants to know, my question, if we get a compensatory pick in the third, what place can we use it? Okay. There's right now the projection is there's going to be 7 to 8 third round draft picks that'll be compensatory picks. They happen at the end of the third round. So the NFL comes out with the order of those based on contracts that were lost right now because of the other people that are in line for them. The Steelers are probably looking at one of the last couple picks in that first round. They're in that first round of compensatory draft picks, which would be the third round. Make sure I better clarify that. So you're probably looking at one of the last, 4 to very last picks of the third round. And it's really important that it's a third rounder for the Steelers, because if it goes to the fourth rounder, it bumps all the way back another 30 some picks. So that fine line between the third and the fourth really does make a difference. So, I just skipped ahead a little bit. Because I'm getting some other stuff. Let's see. You guys had some really good stuff here. So, Norm says the unknown was Bell and AB being jerks, and Connor and Juju not being the one RB and WR, and then the two guys at backup quarterback. So you've got to think about it. That was really some crazy stuff, because the two guys that the Steelers lost, now granted they didn't have Bell the season before, the guys that were there to replace them dealt with injuries all season. Connor was in and out. Juju got hurt the first week of the season and was playing through injury until finally he was out for a while. It was just kind of tough. And the backup quarterbacks did not thrive. I don't know that they had a very good the Steelers weren't set for a situation without Ben Roethlisberger, in my opinion. So I think bringing in the quarterbacks coach that they did this year is another way to kind of be more prepared for it this year, but we will see. Um, okay. Jesse says, if anything, I expect the Steelers to trade back like Seattle did last season. I don't know about the Steelers trading back when out of the second round or later in the second round when they didn't have a first round pick. So there we go. I just saw that we're going to have it hasn't showed up on my screen yet, but it showed up on my phone. We do have a super chat question. Just so you all know, there is the super chat feature where you can write your comment or question and donate any dollar amount you want to the show. And I will make sure that we bring that up. For sure, as we skip through things, if you don't feel like that's something you want to do, that's fine. Put your comments out there. I'll try to see as many as I can, but at least make sure you go in, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That's the best thing you can do to help us out. So let's jump to that super chat. Okay. This is from Brando. Or no, sorry, Brando. I almost read that wrong. Okay. Is this draft class deep enough at the positions of needs for the Steelers to where they can trade back in this draft to acquire more picks for future years, which was kind of something we were talking about. It all depends on what we deem our positions of need. So that'll depend on the free agency. I mean, if the Steelers can't re-sign BJ Finney, they're going to have to try to find something as a center. I don't know how deep this draft is at center. Then you have other positions like outside linebacker, like tight end, that there's just a lot of question marks to go. By the time we get to April, we will have a much better idea with that. Much better idea with that. So, I mean, this is great. I see a lot of stuff in the live chat of people saying, this is what we need the most. This is what we need the most. This is what we need the most. Everyone has a different opinion. So, and that's okay, because just because I have an opinion doesn't mean that mine would be right as well, because I'm the one who's on screen. So that's why I like to see your all's opinion and hear your all opinion all the time, because this is really helpful. Okay. Because there we go. Jesse's saying, why not pick up a third or 3 third-round picks? So, because right now, the Steelers they have one. But some good stuff going on there. So Ezra said, hold on, I'm trying to get it to show up. There it is. Okay. We let Keenan Lewis go to the Saints after his rookie contract, and he made the Pro Bowl with the Saints. Keep Bud, defense wins championships. Yeah, we did let Keenan Lewis go, and I think he did. He might have just been one really good year for the Saints that he had, but he ended up struggling with injury a lot as well, because you just never know. That's the biggest thing that can kill franchises, is when you pay a lot of money to players that aren't out there. Prime example is the Steelers. Going into this year, I didn't look at last year's number. It might even be the same thing, but going into this year, the 2 biggest cap numbers on the Steelers are Ben Roethlisberger and Stephon Tuitt. And they both finished the year on IR and weren't here for more than half the season. So that's a killer when those kind of thing happens. Okay, we've got another super chat question from Snowman. Says, how would I handle the tight end situation? That's a great question, because I've brought this up. A lot of people have written off Vance McDonald as being a guy who might not. The Steelers could save over $5.5 million with Vance McDonald. He's one of those players that if they don't pick up the club option, that's where they could save some money. The problem you have to ask about that is, that I've said many times, is it going to cost more to replace him than it would to keep him for next year? Meaning, in order to get someone anywhere close to the caliber of Vance McDonald, can you do it via free agency? And would it be cheaper? Or do you feel like you can do it in the draft, but you just don't know for sure? So that's really tough. There's a lot of things that could really help the Steelers. So it's kind of hard to say. Okay. X says, hey, why don't we keep Bud and draft an outside linebacker? Okay. Michael said something. He's like, a 6-sack guy who can help and run defense would work. That would work and still keep this defense at a very high caliber, assuming that Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, TJ Watt, all are healthy. That's a really good point. That's something that Lance Williams talked about. He said you don't need another big flashy outside linebacker um, that in order to get to production. And the last thing the Steelers can afford to do is overpay on a long-term deal for someone who isn't going to work out. So there's all kinds of good stuff with that. So and Dante says a few people go there taking up money. He mentioned Vance McDonald, and along with Anthony Chickillo. I think Ramon Foster, Anthony Chickillo. Some people are saying Mark Barron is iffy. They would save a lot with cutting him. But once again, how easily are they? How can they easily are they replaced? So, these are good. Okay. I'm trying to pick out some of the best questions. I know and it's so hard because you guys are all saying great things in here. Okay. This is a good one. Dragon Jay-Z. I like this. They really need to figure out what happened to the O-line before they make any draft decisions. Yeah. Was it that losing Ben Roethlisberger for the season, was that something that inhibited the offensive line? Sorry if you see me moving off screen for a little bit. It's getting a little bit dark here where I am in Maryland. And there we go. My face was getting a little bit, I couldn't see myself in the screen. So sorry about that. Back to this. They really need to figure out what happened to the O-line before they make any draft decisions. We don't know. Was it a Ben Roethlisberger thing? Was it a Mike Munchak thing? Was it a getting up in age thing? Was it a combination of everything? Yes, I think it's a combination of it all. And I do think that the Steelers have to address the offensive line in the draft with at least one, if not multiple picks. It doesn't have to be their top pick, depending on what's available. So I'm a big proponent of find your positions of need, take what's best, take what's most available in the second round, unless you have somebody in mind that you know is going to be available in the third or fourth that you think is great value at that position as well. Like if they know, oh, there's a tight end that we really like, but he's not a second round tight end. We could even get him in the beginning of the fourth round when the Steelers have a pick. Then I would prefer them to not draft a tight end in the second round. It's just it's a very, very, very flux situation. Where the thing that I find interesting is not this past draft, but the one before, when everyone thought the Steelers were going to be figuring out what they were going to do at the inside linebacker position after Shazier went out injured. And the Steelers they didn't really do anything at that position. And people they signed, I can't even remember his name now, that played for Washington last year. Mark Barron, not Mark Barron. Why can't I remember his name? Help me out, live chat. I completely that played linebacker. That wasn't bad. He wasn't bad, but unfortunately, he was forgettable, which is why I can't think of his name. So that they didn't. Everyone thought the Steelers were going to take care of inside linebacker in the draft, and they didn't right away. And I'm like, that's because they have a plan. John Bostic. Thank you very, very much. A bunch of people jumping in all at once with that. Thank you. I knew it was a B. It just wouldn't pop into my brain. I just assumed the Steelers had a plan, that maybe they had a gem that they thought they had in later rounds. Come to find out, some people even said that the Steelers were already targeting Devin Bush in the next draft, which I don't know if that was really true or not, but that was one report that I saw out there. I'm like, that would have been crazy for them to go a whole season to not really address the position. But sometimes you got to wonder, sometimes you don't like a pick until you see what the Steelers had in mind. I still remember a lot of people being very upset when the Steelers drafted Juju Smith-Schuster in the second round because the Steelers needed a corner really bad. Well, I'll be honest with you. In my opinion, getting Cam Sutton in the third round, he's ended up being one of their better drafted corners in the third round than they have with some of the corners they've taken in the first. So it's really, really difficult. It's really difficult. So we'll do a couple more questions here, but before we call it a show. Someone said about did someone say to not keep to it, to trade to it? Yeah, the problem is, I had this in an article this week, is that Stephon Tuitt, for the Steelers to move on from Stephon Tuitt, whether release, trade, or whatever, it would cost them more. Well, I'd have to look back exactly what a trade would be, but it would cost them more money to not have him on the team. They would actually lose. He would count more against the cap by the Steelers not having him because of so much of his signing bonus. Now, granted, some of his salary for next year would come off, so it wouldn't be as bad if it was a trade. But Stephon Tuitt is just a guy that needs to stay healthy, because he was having a better year on the defensive line than Cam Hayward was when he got hurt, and Cam Hayward was first team All-Pro. So that's just one of those things. So a lot of people have a lot of opinions of who the Steelers need to keep, who they need to cut. I've been getting some crazy suggestions about position changes and things like that. Bottom line is, this is what we have to ask. Do we trust the Steelers to know what they're doing? Personally, I do. That's the thing that I always say. As much as I'm into football, as much as I try to follow all of this, as much as I think I know what would be a wise move, I always say that the Steelers know so much more than me. And part of the reason that I love them as a franchise is that I can trust them to do the right thing. I live in an area where I know many Washington Redskins fans, and that's the biggest problem they have with their team ever since their ownership changed a while ago, is that they just don't trust them to make the wise moves, because they don't. And what's great is, you're not going to get every move perfect. Everything's not going to work out great. We already talked about that, of how things could have been different with Mr. Butt Naked Get Robbed and things of that sort. But you got to trust that, for the most part, that the franchise, they know what they're doing and they have a plan, and they're going to move forward with that plan. With that said, we're going to go ahead and call it a show. You guys were fantastic discussion here in the live chat. Lots of great things going on there. Want you to know to make sure that you are, of course, liking the videos on YouTube, giving the best ratings that you can if you're listening to these in podcast form. Another thing to do is to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be involved with the live chat. I'm going to go ahead and say there may be some things coming up that we don't know is going to happen in the schedule, maybe like a special show coming here or there, with some really interesting stuff that you might not plan on if you're saying, oh, I know they usually, like my Stat Geek show is right around 9:00 every Tuesday. Well, there might be something else that comes out special here in the next week or so. So make sure you subscribe so you get that notification. So when you see it, you can jump in, because if there might be some really fun and exciting stuff that we could offer here. So make sure you get that like button. Make sure you subscribe. And I just want to thank you all for coming in here on a Saturday afternoon, early evening. It's starting to get dark out. Sorry about that. I had to kind of get distracted with that during the show, but all I could see was the reflection of the screen in my glasses, and my face was kind of fading away, which, for those of you watching on YouTube, probably would have been a much better show. So with that said, make sure you're ready for it. I think we have a show tomorrow night coming. I don't think it's going to be a post-game Pro Bowl show. I think Brian Anthony Davis might have something coming out. We've got The Hangover for sure on Monday. We've got Stat Geek Tuesday. Standard is the Standard, the flagship podcast, coming out on Wednesday. We're going to keep coming out. You're going to be getting at least one show a day. So thank you all again. And in the words of Lance Williams, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you all next time.